Hey guys, we get to another episode of When the Scriptures Become Real. It's kind of podcast where we learn, where we study, where we grow. We try to become the best versions of ourselves as we can as we continue to serve our Lord. Again, you guys find the podcast on YouTube or anywhere else you get your podcast. We're just so thankful you guys are here, that you found us, and that you guys are with us today. All right, so we just wrapped up a Esther series. That was so great with you guys. I really appreciate studying that topic with you. So if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to that series and be involved, and we love to hear from you, right? So you guys are great, and we really appreciate everything that you guys do for us in the podcast. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to start kind of a new topic today. And this is something I'm really excited to look into, because I think this can not only encourage you, but at the same time, I believe it challenges us. And I think those two things, encouragement and challenge, I think those two things always have to go together. I don't think they're two separate things. I think they actually do work together. I think that's the way God intended it. But as we study and as we work and as we look at this together, I want to say before we dive in, and I'm going to say this at the end like I always do for every podcast, but don't feel like you have to do these things by yourself. You know, the Lord has allowed us for the past 7, almost 8 years now to build this community together. And, you know, we talk with one another. We go back and forth. We study the scripture. We encourage one another. You know, we text one another. We call one another. It's such a great thing that we can do here. And sometimes people say, well, George's not going to reach out. Like, this is just another podcast. I've had people literally say that to me. And then when they reached out, they were surprised that it was me. And we actually talked like, well, you actually reached out? Yeah, let's talk. Right. So that's something that we want to do here. So don't feel like you got to do this by yourself. Okay. So as we're studying, as we're going into our topic, you guys might be in the gym, you may be in the car, you may be in a group study. Before we kind of dive into our text, here's kind of our pre-thoughts of where we want to go to kind of set us up for what we want to talk about in our convo. I remember as a kid, I was always obsessed with the idea of not losing. Right? I just didn't want to lose. Right? Even to the point where when I was a kid, I remember in the back seat of the car, right? Maybe as my parents or grandparents or whoever it was, as they were driving, at that time in my mind, I thought every time we got in the car, every other car that we saw, we were in competition with them, right? Not knowing how driving worked. So I thought as we're driving to maybe the grocery store or to the toy store or to wherever we were going, I felt like if a car passed us, we're losing the race. So I was like, oh, we got to go faster. We got to go faster because we can't let that car pass us up, right? We can't lose. Now, granted, I could obviously see there's 100 cars or however many cars in front of us in traffic, but I was just satisfied that we were passing people up, right? I just didn't want to feel like we were last, right? We were losing. And then, you know, as you grow older, another concept that I couldn't understand was not only that, right? I hated that concept of losing, but also the concept of walking. Well, what do you mean the concept of walking? Like, you know how to walk? You know, we lived next to our middle school. And at this middle school, obviously we can go and play basketball anytime we want. We can go on the track anytime we want. And it was a kind of a really big cul-de-sac to where you can kind of walk around, run around the cul-de-sac if you wanted to. So me and my brothers and my friends and the team, we would always go outside and play, and we'd always be running around. And I would kind of look during a break, and there's always kind of one or two people just walking the track. And then as I would go through the neighborhood, there was always groups of families or maybe individuals or maybe couples. And as they're going through the neighborhood, they're just walking really slow. And I never understood that. I was like, well, why are you going so slow? Right? When you could be doing this, you could be going faster. And it's ironic that being 31 now, I'm that person that's walking, you know, everywhere in those neighborhoods and walking around and doing all these things to the point where if I'm walking around the church building trying to collect my thoughts or maybe thinking about things or praying about things, and the kids see me doing that, I walk inside. The kids are like, were you outside kind of talking to yourself? I was like, yeah, kind of. And they're like, well, that's weird. You know, I remember saying the same thing. So when we think about this concept of walking, right, with God and feeling rushed and not wanting to lose and not wanting to be a failure. You know, those are thoughts that I've had. Maybe those are thoughts that you've had too. But, you know, we have to ask ourselves an honest question. And sometimes this question, to be honest with you, it's hard to answer because it's hard to articulate it sometimes. What's the rush when you really think about it? what is the rush? Right? Maybe you have internal, right? You feel like, you internally, because of the standards that you put on yourself, you feel like you have to get to a certain point because you don't want to miss your personal standard. Or then maybe on top of your personal standard, then there's external standards for you. So then now you have double pressure that you feel like you have to be this and you have to get to a certain point here. Or maybe even outside and other people and friends and all these other things. Now there's certain standards that you feel like, man, I can't let people keep passing me up. Like I can't lose. I gotta go a little bit faster. Like this walking thing, this is not really worth it. And as we talk and as we study and as we have this conversation today, guys, you and I, we get into this mode where our self-talk to each other, we try to rush ourselves into the process. And the faster that we feel like we can get to a certain point, the faster we feel like we can reach a level of happiness, or we can reach a level of knowledge, or we can reach a level of financial status, or we can reach a level of external and get praise from other people, right? We feel like we can reach a level, and that's why we want to get there quicker than where we're going now. So with this concept of walking, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, like this concept of walking with God has been a tough concept because you have to retrain your mind of how God works with this walk. Right? God doesn't rush, right? God is outside of time, right? We've talked about that before. So God is not in a rush. We're the ones in a rush. And a lot of times we talk to ourselves, well, I understand that, but we're still bound by time, right? We're still bound by years and months and age. So God might not be bound by time, but it doesn't mean that time doesn't stop clicking for me, right? It doesn't mean that I'm not getting any younger, right? It doesn't mean that these things aren't happening. So now how do we balance that? Right? How do we balance these ideas? So I want to look at Genesis chapter 3. Let's go there. Let's dive here. Genesis chapter 3. And we don't want to be fools, right? And we don't want to rush into processes, right? We don't want to rush in. And so that's kind of the topic is only fools rush in, right? Learn to be slow. Only fools rush in, learn to be slow, right? So look at this. Look at Genesis chapter 3 and let's begin in verse 2. Let's begin in verse 1 to get some context here. So now the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which the Lord God made. And he said to the woman, has God indeed said, you shall not eat of the tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, well, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, ye shall not eat of it, and neither shall you touch it, lest you die. Then the serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die. Now watch verse 5. For God knows that in the day that you eat of it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God. Quick pause. Okay, let's take a pause. Let's fast forward a little bit. Remember when Adam and Eve sinned? After they ate of the fruit, God came walking through the garden in the cool of the day. So what does that indicate that God was doing with them before? The same thing he wants to do with you and me right now. He's walking with them. And as God is walking with them, and as God is learning to walk, as Adam and Eve are learning to walk with God, notice there had to have been an admiration for the Creator. Man, what it would be like to be like him, what it would be like to know the things that he knows, what it would be like to just draw near to him and just know him and conversate with him and be able to understand him and be able to do all these things. So then guess who sees that? Satan sees that. So watch how he tempts Eve. For God knows, verse 5, the God that is wisdom, right? The God that you're walking and communing with and learning from every day. For God, that God knows that in the day that you eat of this fruit, your eyes will be open and you will be like who? You will be like wisdom. So what did Satan actually tempt Eve with? Instead of walking with God, why don't you just become wise like him? That's how he tempts you and me right now. This thing that you're doing, Jordan, this thing that you're doing, put your name there. Why are you so slow? Do you understand how slow you are? I mean, what's the point of literally talking and communing and walking with God and serving people? You understand how many people are passing you up? Do you understand that you're not getting any younger? Do you understand that you're not even close to the point that you thought you'd be at? Do you understand that? So, since you understand that, why are you walking with him? Forget walking with God, because where has that gotten you? How far has that gotten you? So instead of walking with him, why don't I give you the wisdom that he already has? So think about this. Why do we rush in? Why do we rush into processes? Because we don't want to take more walks. We don't want to take more walks with God. I want to illustrate it this way. We just got back from the Ark in the Creation Museum, right? If you haven't gone, it's a pretty cool place to go see. But from the church building to the Creation Museum, it's like 5 hours and 46 minutes, right? So that's driving, right, from here to there, right? St. Louis to Kentucky. Now, that drive, 5 hours and 46 minutes, that does not include stops. That does not include what if something happens to the car. That does not include all these other things that could happen. It's assuming that you just go from here to there and don't stop, right? That's the assumption. So then I clocked it. I said, well, how far would it be if I walked there, right? From St. Louis to Kentucky. It's a 10-day and 6-hour walk. Guess what? That's also not including what could happen. That's also not including how many times I stop. I need to sleep. I can't walk straight for 10 days, right? That does not include all these other things, but that's from point A to point B. Now, which one are you going to do? You're going to drive because obviously you understand, you're not naive, right? You understand that if you drive, yeah, I might stop. Yeah, there might be problems. Yeah, I might have to take a detour, but I get there faster. So that's how we do things with life. Well, I'm going to take this job. I'm going to take this thing. I'm going to be in this thing and I'm going to take all these things. And I understand I'm not naive, right? I understand that if I take this job or if I go here or if I do this financial thing or if I get into this relationship or this marriage, I'm not naive. I understand problems come with it. I understand things might go left. I understand there might be detours, but guess what? It's faster than walking. That's where he has us. It's a perfect temptation. Why? Because he knows how impatient we are, that we'd rather take the faster route knowing that things still happen, but at least I got there quicker. You see, when we learn to walk with God, what did Eve want? Eve wanted wisdom. Is that a bad thing? Well, no, all of us want to be wise. Right? Solomon asked for wisdom, right? David asked for wisdom, right? We have people in scripture asking for wisdom, right? So is wanting wisdom bad? No, wanting wisdom isn't bad. So by Eve wanting to be wise, is that bad? Absolutely not. But where'd the sin come in? The way she took it. You see, the thing that Satan does is he wants you to be wise. You'll get wisdom, but you'll get wisdom with consequences. You're wise. So now, is Adam and Eve, after they ate of the fruit, are they wise now? Yeah, they're wise, but was it worth it getting the wisdom that way? You see, if Eve wanted wisdom, and I heard this the other day, I thought it was great. If Adam and Eve and me and you, if we wanted wisdom, guess what we could have done? Maybe we should have just taken more walks. If we wanted more wisdom, who is wisdom? God. So if he's wisdom, then what should we have done? Maybe I should have just been taking more walks with him. And here's the thing, guys, and I can only tell you, taking walks with God, it is a frustrating process. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But taking a walk with him, you have to fight your own internal thoughts, right? I'm slow. Then you got everybody else telling you you're slow. Or even if they don't tell you, you know that's the thought, right? You're slow. Or there's something wrong with you. Taking a walk with God, so many things happen on that walk. Remember the trip that I talked about, right? So if I drive from here to the Creation Museum, it's 5 hours. But if I take that walk, So many things can happen. So much turmoil can happen. So many setbacks can happen to where now I'm not even 2 or 3 days in. And I know, man, I still got 7, 8 days left. I can't make it. I don't want to keep walking. I just want to hop in the car and let's get there quicker. As you learn to walk with God, the reason why Satan tempts us with wisdom is because he understands that as we're walking with him, we get tired of it. Now, remember what Paul says. Paul says we run the race. Now, when we think of that verse, we automatically assume we're literally running. No, we're in a race, but we're walking. We're walking with him. And that's why Paul says we need to endure, because as we walk with God, it takes a while to get to the point where he wants us. As we learn to walk with him, guys, there's going to be trial. There's going to be temptation. There's going to be setbacks. But here's the thing about the what the walk can teach you more than anything else. God knows you more than you know you. And you should know yourself because you're you, right? But we serve such an amazing creator that the walk that you take with God, if you choose to do so, and again, not everybody's going to make that choice. But if you choose, young man, young woman, if you choose to walk with God and you really want to do this and you really want to walk, God is going to teach you more about yourself on that walk than you know about yourself. And guess what? That's a slow grind. And not everybody wants to take that walk. And I think too, just as kind of like a little side mission here, I think we know that. And I think we really don't want to know more about ourselves. So we'd rather trick ourselves to think we already got it. But as we walk with God, God teaches you more about you and more about your need for him. And even through your failures, even through your sin, even through all these things, that your successes, your small victories, all these things, he teaches you more about you. But guess what? It takes a day-to-day process for God to teach you that. And we don't have time for that today. I don't have time. I'm getting too old. I don't have time. My internal clock is ticking. I don't have time. I'm going to be the last one. I don't have time. I'm going to miss out. I don't have time. My opportunity's out there. We don't have time. The reason why that we might not have the wisdom we think we do is because we don't make walking with God a priority. We'd rather take something and get wisdom quicker. And let me tell you guys, you'll get it. I promise you, you'll get wisdom. But you won't get it the way that you want it. But you'll get what you want. You'll get wisdom. You'll learn, but not the way that you wanted to learn. But notice, as Adam and Eve, just imagine having the opportunity and the privilege to walk and talk with God, wanting that communion. But we want to rush that process so much that we'd rather take something quicker than learn to walk with our God. I want you to think about this. Think about the examples of walking, right? The imagery is everywhere. The more you look at it, the imagery is literally everywhere. But here's something I want you to look at. Look at Micah chapter 6. Look at Micah chapter 6 and look at verses like 7 and 8. Yeah. Micah chapter 6, verse 7 and 8. Now, I want you to notice, oh yeah, this is it. Look at Micah chapter 6, verse 7. Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, 10,000 rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the first fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? Love that fruit example. The first fruit of the body for the sin of my soul. What does God want? You see, we think wisdom, for some reason, is your head knowledge about God. Does God want you to learn about him? No doubt. Matthew chapter 11. No doubt. Come learn. And that phrase is for the Pharisees, is come learn of me. But there's something we could take of that too. Does God want you to learn about him and know about him with your head knowledge? Absolutely. But sometimes we think that's it. Does God, notice what he says. He has shown you, oh man, what is good. What did God say after creation? Behold, it is good. And then notice he even doubles down on it. Behold, this is very good. Now watch this. God has already shown you what's good. What's good? What does the Lord require of me? That's a question we got to ask on our walk, because I believe we think the more that we do, the better I look in God's eyes. The more that I do, the better I look in front of the brethren. The more that I do, the more respect I'll get in front of people. The more that I do, the more spiritual I'll look in front of people. We can be delusional like that if we want to. So notice what Mike is saying. What am I supposed to give to get like this? What does God want? To do justly, to love mercy, that's big, and to walk humbly with your God. You know, learning to walk humbly with God has been my toughest battle. Learning to walk humbly with God has been my toughest battle. Because as you walk with God, the lessons that he teaches you in the way that he deems necessary, you can't control that. You can't control how he teaches you the lesson, or when he teaches you the lesson, or why he decided to teach you that lesson. Sometimes it won't make sense, but learning to walk humbly with him, sometimes as you walk with him, there's a, Lord, I don't understand. Lord, this doesn't make sense. Lord, I don't want to walk anymore. Like, I don't want to keep doing this. And this is why Satan understands the walk with, he understands that process. So then what he does in that walk, he plucks people out. She doesn't want to wait. He doesn't want to wait. They don't want to walk. He doesn't want to walk. I'll just give it to him quicker. Walking with God, please. What's that going to do? You're going to be so slow. You understand how slow the process is that God teaches you? It's so slow. He is so slow to talk. So slow. Why do you want to learn like that? I could just give it to you now, and then you can move on to the next thing. How many of us have done that? I just want to move on to the next thing so I can get to the next level and get to the same thing so I can have. We're missing out on wisdom because we don't have time to take a walk. You know, as I go on walks and maybe you see a couple on a park bench, you see families walking, you see individuals walking. It's kind of cool to see when you see people and you're sitting on the bench and maybe you're sitting next to someone and a husband or a wife or, you know, a couple or whatever the case might be, a son, a daughter, whatever the case might be. I've grown to like this phrase. Hey, you want to go for a walk? And when they say that, let's just walk. And they're just satisfied with that. Like, they don't have to go fast. They don't have to get somewhere at a certain point. You just want to, you want to just go on a walk. Essentially, that's what God is asking me. That's what God is asking you. Do you just want to go on a walk with me? Well, Lord, I just don't want it to take 10 days. I don't want it to take 50 years. I don't want it to take 30 years. I don't want it to take, I guess you don't want to walk with me. How many of us have denied that walk with our God? We don't have time to walk with him. That's why we're fools at times and we rush in. So look at what Eve was tempted in, right? It's the same process. Now, as we keep building this idea of only fools rush in, why? Because number one, as we looked at, we don't want to take more walks with God. We don't have time for that, right? We don't have time to take more walks with him. But then number two, we won't watch and wait. You know, there's a power that, again, I'm still learning, right? The Lord is still teaching me. But there's a power in stillness in every situation. Now, obviously there's examples you can go to. You could talk about Moses, right? When he told the children of Israel as they're coming out of Egypt and they see the Egyptians, be still and know the salvation of the Lord, right? We could talk about Psalm chapter 46, be still and know that I am God. We could talk about all these other examples of being still. But sometimes there's an example that is completely overlooked. And according to Hebrews chapter 12, He's the one that we're supposed to be looking to anyway. So when you think about Jesus, there are so there are so many examples of Jesus standing still. And I want you to look at Mark 9. Look at this real quick. Look at Mark 9, and I believe it's like verse 40. Yeah, there it is. Mark 9 verse 46. Now, again, and do this kind of size study on your own. If you do that, if you have like eSword or Concordance, Logos, whatever the case might be, whatever Bible software you've got, look up that phrase, or even on Google, look up the phrase Jesus stood still and just comparatively look at all these texts of what Jesus does when he stands still. This is just one example. Okay. This is just one example. But Mark 9, verse 46, watch how your Bible starts. Now, when they came to Jericho, as he went out of Jericho with his disciples, then who else was with him according to the text? A great multitude. Let's take a quick pause. For some reason, and again, this is just me, but sometimes when we think like a great multitude followed Christ, it's almost like this great multitude followed him almost like in awe. Like no one's saying nothing. It's like quiet, but there's just a mass amount of people, right? This is a Every time you see Jesus in a multitude, it's always a chaotic situation. There's needs. There's people that need healing. There's people crying. There's people that doubt. There's people that hate. There's all this stuff going on in a multitude. But regardless of your position of what you thought of Jesus, you're following him because you just want to see what's going to happen next. So this is a chaotic situation. So understand that as Jesus and his disciples are doing this, there's a lot going on. There's always a lot going on. But I want you to notice what happens. Blind Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, sat by the road and he was begging. Now watch verse 47. Now when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out. Why is he crying out if he doesn't even understand that there's things going on? Yes, blind Bartimaeus is blind, but he's not deaf. He understands this is a chaotic situation, and this is probably more people than I've ever seen in the area that I'm at right now. So the only hope that I have in this giant chaotic situation where everybody's trying to, here's our word, everybody's trying to rush to Jesus, what's the only thing I can do here? All I can do is cry out. Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. But then watch verse 48. Then many warned him to be quiet. Where do you think that many came from? The multitude. Why are you even crying out to him? He's not going to help you. Look at all this stuff going on. He has no time for you. That's another temptation Satan uses. Because he understands as we walk with him and we're walking and we're walking and we're walking, it takes so long that it feels like God, this is a waste of time. All this walking, all this discipline, all this learning these lessons, all these things that God uses to teach you lessons, all this stuff is not even worth it. He doesn't even have time for you. I could teach you this so much quicker. You can get this wisdom quicker and move on to the next thing. Why are you taking so long? Many warned him to be quiet, but he cried out even more. Son of David, please have mercy on me. Watch verse 49. So Jesus stood still. I want you to think about this phrase for a minute. It kind of blows my mind the more I think about it. As we're walking with God, remember that journey that we said if we walk from here to the Creation Museum, that it would take 10 days and 6 hours to get there? 10 times out of 10, we're going to stop on that trip, aren't we? Because we need to stop and rest. But maybe we stop because we're tired. You know, as we walk with God, God understands as we walk with him, because he was a man, he understands as you walk with God, you get tired. But many times we're so arrogant and we tell people, well, you just lack faith. You just need to. Well, yeah, because you're the authority, right? Yeah, you're the perfect picture of all this stuff, right? So we all should be listening to what you got to say because you're the perfect one. You see, we have this complex at times that we want to show a level of perfection in front of the brethren, that if we don't show a level of perfection, then number one, well, you can't be used if you're not perfect. Then number two, then obviously, well, I don't know if you can be trusted if you're not perfect. Then number three, well, I don't know if you can really be effective in the way you want to be effective. We have so much fear with all that stuff. But Jesus knows as we take a walk with God, Jordan's going to get tired. You're going to get tired. I can't walk anymore. I don't want to do this. I can't tell you how many times I've been in my car. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't think I want to preach. I don't think I want to help people. I think I just want to, I don't know what else I want to do, but I want to do something else besides this. I don't want to do this anymore. There's so many times as you walk with God that you're going to stop and it's not going to make sense. Well, that's not, the entire book of Job is Job walking with God and him stopping because he doesn't get it. Yes, there's a narrative between Satan and God, and there's a heavenly narrative there. We understand that. But there was a man named Job. And all this stuff happens to Job simultaneously. And as Job is on his walk with God, he doesn't understand. So what does Job do? Job cries. But he does all of this and keeps his integrity before God. David, as David walks with God, David sins. And as David sins, he loses his firstborn son. Guess what David does on his walk with God? David cries, I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose you, God. I don't want to lose my son. I don't want to lose. Restore unto me, Psalm 51. Restore unto me the joy of thy salvation. Do not take away your Holy Spirit from me. Sometimes, guys, you get tired of walking. And Jesus and God understand that. But so many times we have this image that you have to be a perfect contestant in this race. And if you're not perfect like us, right? If you're not enduring like me, if you don't break down, if you're not strong and stoic like me, then I guess you got work to do, brother. I guess you got work to do, sister. Yeah, like we're the authority. It's sad. And it's very interesting that those that have that mindset are the most broken. But that's another conversation for another day. But as we look at this concept, what have we forgotten to do? We don't know how to stop and stand still. Lord, I can't take it. Did you know that that's healthy? You think about what Jesus did in the garden. Jesus stood still and he prayed. What did he say? Lord, take this away. But not my will, but thy will be done. Jesus walked with his Father every single day. And as Jesus walked with his Father, even outside of the garden moments, think about all the healing that Jesus did. Think about all the walking he did. Think about all the things that Jesus did every single day. Can you say that Jesus didn't get home tired every day? That Jesus didn't get back to the tent tired every day? I need my Father. This is hard. But guess what? He showed us how to do it the right way. So a reason why we rush in is because we have no idea how to walk with him. And then as we walk with him, we feel like we got to walk perfectly and we can't stop. And again, like this connotation with walking, there's this connotation if you walk, well, you're slow. You don't know where you're going. You don't know your direction. And I'm going to pass you up. But then we have this connotation, if somebody stops, then what do we say about them? You're weak. You're a quitter. You don't have faith. You're not strong. You're not. So then people hear all this stuff, and then now what do? They quit the race. Instead of saying all that stuff to these brethren and saying these stuff to people that need us, why don't we do the thing that Job's friends did, which was probably the best thing that they did in the book, and they stood with him? Why can't we just do that? That's a question I'm asking. Why can't we just do that? Because we always want an answer, don't we? Sometimes there is not an answer to why God did something. There is not a human answer for that. But guess what I can do? I can have mercy, Micah chapter 6. Why can't we do that anymore? I'm asking. That's a question. Now, as we look at this, notice verse 49. So Jesus stood still, and he commanded him to be called. Then they called the blind man, saying to him, be of good cheer. What does he tell him to do? Rise. He is calling you. So the same people that said to him, be quiet, when Jesus commanded him to be called, guess what some people said? He's calling you. He's calling you. Then he arose, he set aside his garment, and he rose and he came to Jesus. So in those moments, James chapter 3, in those moments, we talked about this in the last podcast, but just as a reference, if you go back and see the book of James, James chapter 3, we talk about humbling ourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he will lift you up. But notice James chapter 4, verse 9. But before that verse, lament, mourn, and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning, and let your joy be turned to gloom. So when we're in those moments where we're walking with God and it's such a slow process, and the way that he's teaching us these lessons and how he's teaching us these lessons and how these things keep happening, and it hurts, and I don't want to learn it that way, and I don't want to keep walking like that, and I don't want to be left behind, and I don't want all these things to keep happening over and over and over and over and over again. You rise after you weep and mourn, and you go to Jesus. And then guess what Jesus is going to do? He's going to keep walking with you, because guess who understands how hard the walk is? He does. You see why it's not worth rushing in? And you see why how Satan uses this walk against us? The way that he's going to teach you this lesson is going to be slow. It could possibly be painful. You're going to have to wait for years. And even if you do, Jordan, even if you do put your name there, that doesn't even guarantee something's going to happen. What if you do all that stuff? What if you do all this learning? What if you do all this walking? What if you do all this stuff with God and he teaches you all these lessons in all these different ways? And guess what? You're still who you are. Still haven't got to where you want to be. Nothing's happened. All these things aren't aligning. You just wasted your time, Jordan. You're the fool. You see the voice? You see what's happening here? And you see how we convince ourselves, you know what? I have been walking for too long. This is dumb. This is dumb. I'm the one that looks like an idiot. Right? I'm the one that looks dumb for taking this long and walking with God. Please. But maybe I am the one that's been wrong on this. So you know what? Forget this. And it's not like I'm going to be a bad person. It's not like you're going to be a bad person and be a bad guy or be a bad girl. But you know what? I'm going to go faster than this. I'm going faster than this. Why? Because I don't want to stand still. You know, here's the thing about Jesus. You understand today, and we'll go to our last point here. But when you think about, okay, let me illustrate it this way. Y'all know me. Y'all know I'm a big superhero guy, right? You understand that. I'm a big Superman guy, right? So one of the scenes that always gets me, you can look at Superman Returns, you can look at Man of Steel, great movies, but as there's always a scene where as he's learning about who he is and he's trying to hone those powers, especially how he can hear, he hears too many things at one time. So he gets a headache because it's too much. So I hear kids crying. I hear alarms. I hear all these things happening all around the world, and I can't hone this down. Why? Because it's too much to listen to. So the reason why that I don't think we like to walk with God, and I don't think we like to be still with God, is because God makes us face ourselves. And we want to be so distracted today, or we want someone else to say that we're so great, or we want someone else or something to distract us to such a level that we don't want to look at God face to face, and we don't want God to show us who we are. So because of that, we want to be so distracted that I don't want to hear all this noise. I don't want to hear that about changing and molding and repenting and getting better and growing and challenging and encouraging and serving. I don't want to hear all that. So I'd rather be distracted in my life. You see, when you stand still and you stop doing all the stuff that you're doing, even if you're doing great things for the Lord, even when you just stop, you realize all the noise that's around. You realize all the people that actually need help. You realize your family that needs help. You realize all these things, and I think the reason why we stay busy doing good things is because we don't want to stop and face it. We don't want to stop and face ourselves. But notice, Jesus stood still, and as he stood still, guess what he's probably hearing? I can hear all these noise. I can hear people doubting me. I can hear Pharisees in this multitude. I hear my disciples. I hear all these things. But guess what else I hear? I hear blind Bartimaeus crying out for me. Jesus wasn't afraid to stand still. It's something that we learn in a walk. But if you run, guess what? You can go past all that. Very interesting, isn't it? Last one. Why do we rush in? Right? Why do we rush in? Well, we don't want to take more walks, number one, right, as we studied. 2, we don't want to watch and wait or be still, right? Mark chapter 9. But then 3, we don't want to wrestle. What are you talking about, Jordan? Like, we're getting violent now. What are you talking about? We don't want to wrestle. As you walk with God, and as we see all these examples in Scripture, we can go Abram, we can go David, we can go Job, we can go. There's so many examples in Scripture. Even Jacob, remember in Genesis 32, as you walk with God, you wrestle with him. And you wrestle with your thoughts. You wrestle with his word. You wrestle with what he wants you to do. You wrestle with where you're at, with where he's trying to get you to be. And a lot of times as we do that, it takes so much energy out of you. And you're just like, you know what? I just don't even want to fight anymore. It is what it is. It just is what it is. I think a lot of us at times, our Christian walk has become apathetic. And I mean it by saying this. We've just kind of accepted, well, that's just how the world is. Well, that's just how things are. Well, that's just how things are just going to have to be. If we're supposed to be the agents of change, we can't have that mindset. Even as impossible as it might look. Why aren't we wrestling with the word of God? Why aren't we wrestling and letting God use us and mold us and be fragrances and aromas for him and being salt and light? That mindset kept the children of Israel out of the promised land. But the mindset of Caleb and Joshua said, I understand how the world is. I understand how people say I should be. I understand how that is. But you know what? I have faith, and this is what God said. So why can't we take that? Why can't we do this? And this is not a arrogance. This is a humble confidence and understanding. God said it. Why are we not believing that? Well, this is just how things are, so you can't really do that. But you can serve God, but you can't really serve God in that capacity. Where does it say in the Bible I can't do that? That's what you said, right? You're projecting your fears. That's what you say. That's not what God says. So many times we get so scared and we don't want to wrestle with God. And we don't want to walk with him, and we don't want him to teach us about ourselves and about how we can be effective agents of change for him and his glory. Let's someone else will do it. I'm not equipped. We don't want to fight for anything. We don't want to fight for anything. And I love how in the Old Testament, Joshua says it, Moses says it. Just watch, stand still. The Lord will fight for you. I want you to think about something. The Lord fights for us. But sometimes we don't want to fight for him, and we don't want to fight with him. Sometimes we become docile to where we think, well, if I do that, then that shows that I don't have faith, so I really don't want to wrestle with God. Jacob wrestled with him. Gideon didn't understand why he was chosen. Lord, I don't. Moses didn't understand. God, send somebody else. Please take someone else. Someone else is better for the job. David wrestled with him. Lord, I don't understand why you would do this. Job wrestled with him. Lord, this doesn't make sense. You used to come into my tent. We used to talk like friends would talk. You see, it's healthy to wrestle with God. And you know why? Because God can take it. Because he's God. In all this, Job did not sin, and he kept his integrity before God. Did you know you can wrestle with God and still trust him? So as we talk about this concept, guys, of only fools rush in, learn to be slow and take a walk. Guys, you might be at a point in your life where you have become, and it's either you or those around you have convinced you of why you're so slow and why you shouldn't be taking the walk with God that you're taking now. If that is the case, respectfully and humbly and kindly, you need to start walking away from those people. Because the way that you walk with God, that is the walk that's going to teach you more about his heart than any other walk could take you. That is the walk that's going to teach you more about yourself than any other person or walk could take you. But we have to be willing to get up every day and just take the walk with God. Is it hard? No doubt. Is it hard? No doubt. Is it difficult? Yes, it is. You see how hard it was? I hit my headphones on the mic. That's how hard it is, right? It's hard. It's hard to walk with him. And it's monotonous. And at times it's boring. And sometimes it feels like it's so slow and you're not really living life like that. And it feels like you're not getting at the place you want to get to. And it feels like at times there's no direction. And it feels like you're not being led anywhere. It's almost like, and here's my last example. It's almost kind of like when you watch a movie, and maybe you watch a movie or a series, and the reason why we love movies and series is because we can follow a character and there's character development. And we can see there's a storyline, right? There's from movie 1 to movie 2 to movie 3 to big movie 4, right? We saw the journey and we understood through all the ups and downs and the slowness and all that stuff, there was a goal, right? There was an opportunity, there was a storyline. But sometimes I'm making this personal. Maybe this is coming through your radio or your headphones or your car, whatever the case might be. I'm talking about you as an individual. As you walk with God, it feels like your life doesn't have a storyline. It's like, well, what's the story? Where are you going? The storyline is just walk with God today. Just walk with him today. Will you get an answer today? Maybe. Will the Lord do something for you? Maybe. Will he teach you something today? Yes. Will he take you somewhere today? Maybe. But you just got to keep walking with him. Learn to walk humbly with your God. And guys, if you want to take this walk, and if you are taking this walk, please don't do this by yourself. That's why the Lord gave us the church. The church are people that should be walking like this. It's slow, and it's a build, and it's a molding process. But please don't do this on your own. Reach out to us. We'd love to walk with you. Truly, I truly mean that. We love to walk with you and encourage you and pray with you. And we've had Zoom calls with people and phone calls, and we've built lasting friendships and relationships here. And we want you to be a part of that. So please reach out to us. We love you guys. We appreciate you guys. And we'll be back, Lord willing, on Monday with another podcast. Thanks, guys.